So welcome everyone. I'm so delighted to have you join this event where we're launching our solutions catalog. This is an initiative that we've been working on for a really long time and are so happy to have so many of you join us for its launch. We know that there's so much competition for your time with so many webinars these days, this new time of Zoom overload. So we feel really, really privileged that you have chosen to spend the next hour with us. And we do hope that you find it useful and interesting. So the agenda is as follows. We are now in the welcome part of the session. Then we will have an introduction to Kopernik and the solutions catalog. Then we'll have an overview of the functions of the solutions catalog site. And then our team will present 3 of the experiments that are part of the solutions catalog. Then after these presentations, we'll have time for your questions and lively discussion, I hope. I'll be moderating the Q&A, and once again, you can either raise your hand using the raise hand function, and I'll ask you to ask the question directly, or you can type the question in the chat box at any time during the session, and we'll respond during the Q&A session. The session will go for 1 hour, but we have built in an extra 15 minutes buffer time at the end of the session for any additional Q&A. However, if you do need to leave once the hour is over, please feel free to do so. I do anticipate that there will be quite a few questions, so I apologize in advance if you're not able to, if we're not able to respond to all of the questions. And if that is the case, that we'll do our best to follow up with you after the webinar. I apologize in advance if anything goes wrong with the technology, but I do hope that we have a smooth run today. So once again, we're delighted to have so many of you here today. There are representatives from the development sector, from the private sector. I can see NGOs, academia, those working in the agricultural sector, women's economic empowerment, environment, plastic pollution issues. So in order to get a better sense of the composition of who's here today, we'd love to run a quick poll. So now a poll should pop up on your screen, and we'll just take 1 minute and if you could respond so we can see where everybody is from, and we'll share the results very soon. So we've got 74 people here today. Now 40 have responded so far. So we'll just take a few moments. So while we're still doing the poll, I'll introduce the speakers for today. So first we have Toshi Nakamura, who is the co-founder and CEO of Kopernik. We also have Riesa, who is the Associate Manager of our Solutions Lab. We have Nanda Riska, who's the Associate Director of our Solutions Lab. And we have Gina Long, who is the Associate Director of our Communications and Strategic Initiatives team. They'll be introducing the Solutions Catalog, our lean experimentation approach, and sharing examples of 3 experiments that we conducted that are featured in the catalog. So we can see that today, the majority of people a small majority of people are from the NGO sector, followed by the private sector, where people in the individual capacity, academia, and donor development agencies. So thank you so much for participating in the poll. And I will now hand over to Toshi. Once again, please feel free to type in your questions or comments in the chat box, and we'll respond to these during the Q&A session. Toshi, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And then again, thank you for joining us today. And I'm very, very happy to see many familiar names and faces already. So I will be talking about Kopernik and then Solutions Catalog. And so while I was talking and then my colleagues were presenting, please think about these 2 questions, and we'd love to discuss these during the discussion time at the end. The first question is this Solutions Catalog likely to be useful for you or for your organizations, and what information you particularly found useful? Second question is, if not, what do you think could be improved to make this more useful for everybody? So next, so about Kopernik, we have been operating for the last 10 years or so. The mission is to solve social and environmental challenges more effectively and innovatively. And we do two types of activities. First one is lean experimentation. And second one is solutions in action. And lean experimentation, this is the one that is very much related to today's topic of solutions catalog. In fact, the solutions catalog is a compilation of a result of our lean experiments. So this is really one of the key initiatives that we have been working on this year and then the past few years. And solutions in action, this is more about direct support to the communities. So we work quite a lot in the aftermath of natural disasters, tsunami, earthquakes, and then also, and most recently, during the COVID-19 crisis. So the solutions catalog, we were, we have been very much encouraged with a lot of great progress in the development sector. For example, there has been a lot of interest in the evidence-driven policy making, and most notable initiatives are JPAL and IPA. But we still see that there's still so many unmet needs, and for which we don't know yet about the solutions that can solve those. And then sometimes this very rigorous assessment, rigorous experiments that these organizations conduct could be too expensive or time consuming. And the second positive development is that there's a lot of interest in innovation. I think there's probably every day somebody is talking about innovation in the development sector, and also multi-sector collaboration. So, we can see that in the discussion around impact investment, and a lot of aid agencies are establishing innovation lab. But I think we see still some gap, which is that I think we like to see something new, rather than the effectiveness of these new things. And then also we see that there's a low risk appetite in the sector. I think we'd like to talk about, of course, what works, but we all know that sometimes interventions don't work. And then we are very hesitant to talk about these rather failures or suboptimal results. And our solutions catalog is trying to address these existing gaps. So this is a compilation of results from our lean experiments of early stage solutions. So it's very lean rather than very rigorous randomized control trial. And we also focus on effectiveness, and we like new solutions as well, but we are focusing on whether the particular solutions are actually solving the unmet needs. We are also interested in the failures. So we will see that in later on that some of or many of the solutions that we test didn't really quite work in solving the unmet needs. So that's also something that we are trying to do and trying to fill the gap. So if we think about how innovative ideas get widespread adoption, you go through a few steps, right? So obviously we need to know what kind of problem that we want to solve. That's the step 0. And then we can, as a sector, think about what could solve these unmet needs. And then the solutions, the ideas are tested, and some of them are actually worth adopting as a pilot. And then eventually it will go widespread adoption. But if we think about the number of ideas that we generate, of course, early stage, we can think of so many creative ideas, but only some of them are worth testing, because some of the new ideas may not be that realistic or too expensive, right? So this is the second stage. And then based on the result of the lean experiment, and of course, only some of them are worth piloting in a slightly larger scale. And after the piloting processes, we learn quite a lot, even more. And then only, again, some part of those ideas will have a widespread adoption. And as a Kopernik, we have been focusing on really the first few steps, finding unmet needs, generating ideas, discussing, brainstorming with our partners, and then conduct lean experiments. And sometimes we kind of take some of these ideas to the next level, but not in a large scale. And today's solutions catalog is really about the second step. And so we generate a lot of ideas with our partners, and then we test them. And this catalog is all about the result of our lean experiment. Next. So the main content that is included in the solutions catalog are as follows: the unmet needs. So we are articulating what kind of problems that we are trying to address, and solutions that we test to address these unmet needs, and then design of experiments, and followed by the result, and the additional considerations. So this is something that I will talk about later on, because some testing, it's actually, sometimes it's more complex than we initially thought. So there's a lot of new additional considerations that we need to make. And then effectiveness rating. So based on the result of the experiment, we are giving a full-scale effectiveness rating, which will be in the next slide. So the most promising solution will get the very strong rating, it's a 4 bars. And the next one have a strong rating, 3 bars. And the next level is moderate, 2 bars. And then the least promising ones will get this 1 bar of weak effectiveness rating. And sometimes the experiment get compromised, or we don't get sufficient data to make a conclusion, in which case we use inconclusive, the last rating in the experiment. Next. So we see that there are 4 types of users that we have in mind for the solutions catalog. First type is those who are working in the development organizations. And I myself was a program officer in the UN system. And when I was formulating a new program, I didn't know what kind of intervention I should include, because there's no kind of a reference in terms of what works or what doesn't. So this one is we see it, we like to have these people in the aid agencies to use the catalog as a reference for program formulation or pilot designing process. And second type of user is those more academic institutions, those working in university or research institutions. And for this type of user, we see this catalog as a depository of potential solutions to be tested at the larger scale, for example, through a randomized control trial. The third type is those in the private sector, and then I'm happy to see that a lot of private sector colleagues are joining today. So the 2 ways, one is this unmet needs, because we have a list of needs that we were trying to address. And you know, oftentimes the biggest question for the private company in conducting a new business is, what is the biggest needs? What are the needs in this emerging market? So the list of unmet needs hopefully will play a role in basically sharing what kind of issues that are there in the emerging market. And second use is that you know, we have tested different early stage solutions. Some of them may be worth picking up, and the companies basically take on these early stage solutions and make them into a more fully-fledged product or services. The last type is funders. So there are a lot of funders interested in development. We see that in the impact investing sector, and they are more they're interested in not only the financial returns but also the social impact. And so this type of catalog hopefully will be also useful for the funders interested in investing in particular types of solutions. Next. So we want to say very upfront about the limitations that this catalog has, and we are very much aware of. First one is that they are mostly quasi-experimental. What I mean by that is that the sampling of the groups or the target or assignment of interventions is often not randomized. But we are planning to increase the number of the experiments using a simple randomization. And second limitation is that the small sample size. And sometimes we have one sample for control and one for treatment. So this means that we might be detecting an extreme responses. But we also want to address this, and we want to have slightly more, around 20 sample size in the future where possible. Number 3 is the simplicity. So we typically we know that, well, in the people in the development sector will know that many problems are complex, and one single intervention will not solve all the challenges. And indeed, we also combine several interventions, but in this catalog, we highlight only the most significant one for simplicity purposes. And then also we know that there are so many other considerations: how much it costs, upfront investment and operating cost, operational viabilities, and comparative advantage over other existing solutions. But these are mentioned in the additional considerations section in the solutions catalog. So this is an overview of solutions catalog and some of the limitations. And then I'll hand over to my colleague, Risa or Icha, to show you the key functions of the solutions catalog.
Thank you, Toshi. Now I will run through the solutions catalog website to show its features and navigation. When we open the website, we'll see the homepage with the list view just like this. And at the top right side, there's a grid icon where we can change the homepage for more a visual page. We have other features on the top right as well. And the first one is for languages. We're planning to have a bilingual content in English and Indonesian. At the moment, the solutions catalog is only available in English. We also have some options to filter the solutions and to search the solutions by typing the name. When we open the homepage, we see the all solution page and several icons next to it here. We listed the solutions based on sector areas. There are 5 areas on which the majority of our work focuses. The first one is water, sanitation, and health, then agriculture and fisheries, followed by environment, energy, and climate. The fourth one is micro-entrepreneurship. And we also work on the education sector. The next icon is the effectiveness dashboard. This is the summary of all results of experiments in the solutions catalog. So we have 24 listed solutions with different effectiveness rating. The breakdown as seen here. There are 3 experiments that have very strong effectiveness, 6 experiments in strong effectiveness, 8 experiments that have a moderate effectiveness, and we have 4 experiments that have weak effectiveness, and we also have 3 experiments that have inconclusive result. On the last icon is the about section that you can read about Kopernik and about the solutions catalog. Moving back to all solutions page, with a list view, you can see key information for each solutions. The first one is the unmet needs, tested solutions, effectiveness rating, location, and related SDGs. And when you hover to the list, you'll see a picture and summary of each solutions. Back to the listed solutions, if you see this VR icon, then there's a 360 video available in the solutions page. We can click learn more to see the solutions in details. And in the solutions page, at the top, you see the key information that have been shown in the list view and summary of the experiment that below that. Scrolling down the page, you can read about the problem, solution and design experiment. You can also see several photos and video. And here we have the 360 video, and you can click the arrow to see the next photos. We present the results with a couple of charts, and you can learn more about the additional consideration here. Coming to the bottom, there is the conclusion and references, usually from our experiment reports and external papers or publications. At the very bottom, you can click collaborate with us if you want to connect or ask more about the solutions. And the last, you can click this arrow to go back to the home page. So next, my colleagues will show you 3 examples of the experiments that we have done so far, and Nanda will show you the first one. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Icha, for the introduction to the solutions catalog. So today I will share one of the examples of solutions we conducted in Florence Island. The solution is called Insulated Container and Reusable Ice Packs. This is a project that we conducted in 2019 in Florence. So as you can see in this picture here, these are motorbike fish cellars, where they attach paint buckets on each side of the motorbike and fill them with fish and ice, then sell them around the villages. Next. The problem they faced using this method of cooling is that it does not keep the fish at the right temperature, especially when the weather is really hot. So this results in the fish being easily spoiled. So knowing this challenge, we tested a simple cooling solution consisting of an insulated rice bucket, the blue color rice bucket on the right side of the picture, and gel packs to improve fish preservation. The gel packs are used to replace the ice, while the insulated bucket maintains a lower temperature inside the bucket. So during our experiments, we worked with 2 mobile fish cellars to test the effectiveness of this solution. As you can see in this experimentation design, the control group is an open bucket with ice and seawater and fish. Our treatment group is the rice bucket filled with seawater and gel packs and fish. For both groups, we measured the seawater temperature and fish freshness, with each of the cellars conducting their cells activities using both of these methods. Now, in assessing the fish freshness, we use the quality index method, or QIM, to measure some of the sensory parameters of the fish, including their texture, their eyes, and gills. The QIM score indicates that the lower the score, the fresher the fish. So in our experiment, we found that the cooling solution maintained an average temperature of 9 degrees Celsius, as shown in the orange line, which was much lower compared to the current cooling method with an average temperature of 24 degrees Celsius, as shown in the gray line. With a total sample of 240 fish, we found that the average QIM score for the cooling solution was 2.1, while the average QIM score of the current method used was 3.4. Now, this means that the cooling solution was much more effective in maintaining the freshness of fish than the current method practiced by fish sellers. So we conclude that using an insulated rice bucket combined with the gel packs, the fish sellers were able to keep the fish at a much lower temperature, so being able to maintain the freshness of fish. Therefore, the effectiveness of this solution is very strong. Next, my colleague Gina will show another example from our solutions catalog. Over to you, Gina.
Thanks, Nanda. Moving on from fisheries to another experiment that we'd like to share this afternoon is the alternative packaging solutions. We conducted this experiment for 6 months between June 2019 and February this year. Next. As a brief background to this experiment, many of us might have known that Indonesia is the 2nd largest plastic polluter in the world. Approximately, Indonesia generates 6.8 million tons of plastic waste per year, and 70% of it is mismanaged. The most commonly found items in the natural environment during cleanup events, for example, are plastic food wrapping, cups and bottles, plastic bags and straws, and also styrofoam packaging. And because the waste pickers only collect the types of packaging that have good value on the recycling market, those packaging are more likely to end up in landfills or in the open environment, like the picture in these slides. Next. As awareness around single-use plastic pollution increases, there are more and more alternative packaging solutions available, which are marketed as compostable and biodegradable. Unfortunately, there is a lot of confusion among the public regarding the 100% compostable label in these products, and many are not aware that it requires industrial composting facilities for it to be composted. Since many of the packaging alternatives look like conventional plastic, we were wondering if it will be disposed of in the same way as conventional plastic. Next. So to know more about this, we conducted our experiment to test whether the packaging alternatives will degrade fast enough to prevent plastic pollution. Through this experiment, we prepared 36 samples, and each sample contains biodegradable, oxo-degradable, and compostable shopping bags, straws, cups, and food containers, as well as bagas, paper bag, and paperboard as comparison. And in total, we tested 11 types of alternative packaging items. We then put 6 samples into its environment. As we can see in this table, we had 5 environmental conditions: home composting, quasi-industrial composting, submerged in ocean, buried in soil, and exposed in open air, and isolated environment as comparison. Our indicator is visual degradation. So we conducted monthly observation of the surface area loss for 6 months. So every month we took its sample from the test environments to measure and photograph the surface area of each item. We then created a photo and written record of the visual degradation. Next. This is the table of our results. What we found was that none of the items that labeled as compostable and biodegradable degraded to a significant degree within the 6-month experiment period in any of the environments they were tested in. However, the cardboard, paper, and baggage packaging visually degraded in all environments except in the open air. Through this experiment, we concluded that these alternatives do not provide a solutions for conventional plastic pollution in natural environments. And as we only consider the visual degradation of the alternative packaging items using a small sample size, we also concluded that the effectiveness of this experiment is weak, and we would recommend further and more comprehensive tests to be conducted in a lab environment. That's all for this experiment. Next, over to Tosi, who will share an experiment on macro entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you, Kagina. So the third and last example is about getting micro businesses online. And in any economy, we know that the small businesses are the backbone. And Indonesia is no exception. And there's 57 million micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Indonesia, and 60% of them are run by women. And the challenge is that these small businesses are having is that they do not typically have access to a larger market. Therefore, their revenues are always constrained and limited. Now, the solution that we tested was to putting them online so that they can have access to a much, much larger market. So this is an example of a woman's business using a rattan and making a different kind of a house product, as you can see in those. And we were training them, the women's group, so that they can put the product online. We also helped these women's group to take photos, beautiful photos of their product, and help them put them the product online. And basically, the design of the experiment is comparing the business performance of their usual business. So in this case, they were relying on the factory order for their rattan products. And then we were comparing during the same period of 2 months, the sales and the number of products sold and a profit between these two factory order business versus their new online business. And the result was very interesting. So that the offline business, which is a factory-based business, they got about 150 units of products sold versus online 43. And it's like, okay, this is not that the great of an achievement. And then if we look at the sales revenue, they also offline generated about 10 million rupiah, while the online 3 million rupiah. But if we look at the total profit, the things start to look a bit different. So the offline business generated about 680,000 rupiah, while online 500,000. So it's much closer in terms of the total benefit. And also the profit per unit. The offline, because the factories are not paying the women much, they're getting much smaller profit per product. And what was interesting is that with the COVID impact, the factory stopped ordering the new products. And then now women are most exclusively relying on this online business. So based on this, these findings, we have given a strong rating, effectiveness rating for this solution of getting micro businesses online. Over.
Thank you, Toshi, and everyone else for your presentations. You can access the Solutions Catalog website through the link that's provided in the chat box now, and we'll also share it with you at the end of this event. So we'll start off with questions now. We've already got some coming in, and I'll alternate between raised hands and questions that are being typed into the chat box. And once again, it's really great to see so many familiar faces here. So starting off with the first question from Pak Bayu, how can we buy the kinds of tools that are tested by Kopernik to implement in our district that may have specific problems? So Nanda, I'll let you take that one.
Yes, terima kasih Pak Bayu for the question. So what kind of how can we buy the kind of tools that is needed? So it really depends on the type of solutions, Pak Bayu. So if there is a funding available, say for instance from a donor or dana desa, or the Kopernik team will be able to support the purchase or installation of the solution. So for instance, if it's a solar dryer, for instance, the Kopernik team will be very happy to support Pak Bayu's team in building and designing the solar dryer for the needs of the people in your area. I hope that answers.
Great, thank you, Nanda. I hope that answers the question. We have a question from Chitra. Hi, Chitra. Regarding the cost of maintaining the ice pack gels related to the fish cooling solutions experiment. Is there a comparison between the current solution and the solution that was tested? Icha, do you want to take that one?
Yes, thank you for your question, Chitra. So the different for the tested solution and the current method, usually coming from the upfront investment to buy the ice gel, as well as the insulated bucket. But when using that technology or cooling solutions, that they need a monthly electricity cost to make the ice pack working. And then the comparison is usually with the normal ice. They buy it that daily with the cost of maybe 5,000 to 15,000 rupiah. So then from our experiments, there's the fish seller recorded an average increase in daily net income of 38% compared to the seller using the current method, the storage method. Thank you.
Thanks, Icha. I'd love to invite more questions from anyone. It's we have so many friends. Jerome, Pak Alistair. Hello, it's really nice to see you here. Thanks for making the time. We have a question from Petra. Hi, Petra. Will there be a category related specifically to agricultural practices? And Toshi, you want to take that one?
Yes, so the short answer is yes. And let me show you some of the the experiments that we conducted in this area. So, so you see that already there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 at least, or 8, 9. Okay, quite a lot of experiments that we have conducted in the agricultural related sector. So yeah, I think we have shared the link to the catalog. So please poke around and take a look and then see how you think about other results of the experiment. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Toshi. So we have a question from Miyazawa-san. So micro business online with women's groups is a very interesting experiment and can be applied in many areas in Bali. What do you think are the keys to a successful online micro business? Toshi, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And so we have been, based on this Rattan business, we have been expanding this support to other types of businesses. So we worked with those women making a dishwashing soap, also those groups that are selling the snacks. And then I think it's actually the mindset and supporting women and then helping them to believe that it's possible. That's, I think, is really the most important part, because many of the women, they know, they have seen that some people are selling their product online, but they always say that, oh, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not sure about that. And if we actually help them, take them through the process of putting the product online, they become a lot more confident, and then they can just run by themselves. So I think it's more about helping them to gain confidence. Thank you.
Thanks, Toshi. So we have another question from Raihal from Katahati Institute in Aceh. And I'm going to ask Nanda to take this one first, and then Toshi to add anything if he has anything to add. Are these best practices submitted to the local or national government in the form of a policy brief as an ongoing advocacy effort? This is a really excellent question. So Nanda, you first, and then Toshi, if you have anything to add.
Yes. So for each project, we always conduct a discussion or workshops with the local or national government. Of course, in more like a meeting or an FGD setting to also know what they think about the projects that we will conduct in their area. And then once the implementation finishes or completed, we always conduct a dissemination event for each project, and then also invite the local government among other stakeholders to share our findings of the solutions, and discuss on how it's best to incorporate this solution into for instance accessing the dana desa or the needs or the needs of the people in that community. So those are the kind of default advocacy effort that we do for every project.
Thanks, Nanda. So Toshi, I'm going to ask you the next question, and then you can add anything that you wanted to the previous question as well. So it's from Michael or Michał, maybe that's a Polish name, from TechSoup. What methods do you use to source projects? Toshi?
Yes, so great question. So sometimes our team implementing other existing projects, they kind of find or talk to the farmers, the fishermen, and they kind of identify new challenges. Or we also conduct this unmet needs research in different areas of Indonesia, and then also I think we did in Myanmar in the past. So through this research, we kind of identify new challenges that we think are worth tackling. And also in other cases, opportunities come from our partners or the donors or funders. And they said, you know, can you guys work on this new initiative? And then when the opportunity comes, we start to work on it. So it's really comes from a different perspective, internal, our research, or externally. Thank you.
Thanks, Toshi. Sorry, I'm going to get you again because it's one of the projects you're involved in. Another question from Chitra. Is there any special treatment for the online shop experiment for micro business? Did you help with promotion? Did you use ads to push on the experiment period? And was there any promotion effort executed during the experiment to help promote the newly established?
Yes. Yes, so this is something that is also related to my comments of simplicity. So we are talking about putting the businesses online, but actually behind that, there are additional support provided. So for example, we conducted the financial training. And then as you rightly guessed, we also pushed the business a little bit with the ad promotion. And then with those, they're getting reaching more customers and then started to get some traction. So yes, there's a little bit of push of ad and then other capacity development support.
Thanks, Toshi. Sorry, it's going to be you again. So we have a question from Palladium from Joanne. I can never say Spanish names correctly, so I'm sorry if I got that one wrong. But thank you for joining. So I understand that you are defining a particular set of desired outcomes for each experiment. Are you considering a more holistic impact measurement, including always social, environmental, cultural, economic, and financial outcomes?
It's an excellent point, Joanne. Thank you very much. And that's something that I think we should consider. One thing that we are kind of careful about is that kind of very leanness of the experiment. And we want to make sure that a particular solution solve the most critical issues first, without which it's useless, I think, to look at other type of the cultural, economic, financial. And then, so we wanted to make sure that this key component first. But as you rightly say, I think some of the solution could have unexpected impact. So I think this kind of looking at more holistic aspects are indeed really, really great point. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a question from Athena Ibrahim from Cast Foundation. This question is, I was noticing the effectiveness rate in the solution catalog. May I ask how effectiveness of the solution is measured, especially in a long-term application?
Yes, another great question. So this in the all experiment page, we basically talk about the design of experiment. So it talks about the duration of experiment, and typically it ranges from a few months, and the longest one I think we had was close to a year or so. So we are looking at this particular period of time where our team was able to go and then collect the data regularly. And then, of course, would it sustain afterwards is a very, very important question. And I think these kind of longer term questions need to come in once the shorter term effectiveness is proven or supported. So thank you. I think this is also a great point. And I think this does touch upon some of the weakness of the lean experiment. But again, I think we want to make sure that the particular solutions does solve the problem, the very specific problem. And then first short term. And then there's no solution that works longer term and then doesn't work in short term. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Toshi. I'll take the next question, which is, are there projects or products that can be viable for general use that could engage and give employment opportunities to the visually impaired? So at the moment, we don't have any specific projects that are working with visually impaired people. Rest of the Kopernik team, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're always looking for new partnerships and opportunities. So if you do have ideas or experiments that you would like to test with us, please do get in touch. I will take the next question from Bopara. Are any of your experiments adopted or replicated by the local government? And I'll ask Nanda to take that one, and perhaps Toshi wants to add something too.
Yes, in terms of adoption or replication by the local government, maybe one example can be the Seaweed solar dryer in Florence that we conducted. So when we implemented this project where we involved the seaweed farmers, then other seaweed farmers saw the positive results of having that seaweed solar dryer. Then this was informed to the local government, and then they adopted and replicated the seaweed solar dryer in the area in Florence. So that is one example of adoption of our experiment. Maybe another example is not necessarily the experiment or solution, but the unmet needs research that we do. And this was presented by Toshi in the beginning of this session, where we need to identify the unmet needs first. So these unmet needs research were gained interest by several local governments for us to conduct, so that we can identify and recommend what are the best solutions to address the needs of the people in that particular area.
So let me add a few examples. So the online business example that I talked about, and actually that was part of the Australian government funded program, MAMPU. And then once we kind of share the result of the business performance with other women-led businesses, they basically requested that they replicate the same type of intervention. So we have supported additional women-led businesses afterwards. And then now during the COVID, we got another funders interested in supporting micro businesses in Bali affected heavily by the lack of tourism industry. So we just supporting another 30 micro businesses in Bali, and mostly I think food and beverage business.
Thank you, Nanda and Toshi. We have a question from Dwi Jayanti from Plastic Detox regarding the experiment of eco-friendly plastic bags, saying it's great, and what will you do after the visual degradation? So I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but so I guess this experiment was slightly different because we wanted to see, this was not something that we were promoting or implementing. We wanted to see whether the bags and these items degraded in the way that they were marketed to degrade, because we saw that there was a lot of confusion among the public regarding these items. So I guess this links back to the national and local government policy. We really want to conduct more rigorous and in-depth research about the effectiveness of these alternative packaging items to see, or to ensure that that real viable alternatives are able to enter the market and provide a solution to the great problem of plastic pollution that we have. Okay, before I move on to the next question, we'll be out of time in 5 minutes for the official session. We will be extending for an additional 15 minutes for those that are able to stay, but for those that aren't, I completely understand that you have other commitments. So, but before you leave, we'd love to just run a really quick poll to see what you thought about the usefulness of the solutions catalog. So we'll run the poll now, and we'll continue to respond to questions as the poll is running. So for those of you that have to leave in a few minutes, sincerely thank you for your participation. It's been great having you here, and we look forward to connecting in the future. For those of you that can stay, let's continue the conversation for another 20 minutes. Okay, so there is a question regarding from Zapak Pakri. I wanted to ask a further question on helping online micro business. Toshi mentioned that confidence was one of the keys to help them sell online. Do you think there's anything that the current e-commerce platforms can do to help them do more on this?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if this Fakri is from the actual online business platform, but if so, we'd love to partner with you guys, because I think there's a huge potential for companies like Tokopedia to support micro businesses, and that I think is, as we have seen, that it's very great for the businesses, but also great for the platform as well. So I think this is something that we would love to pursue further if there's interest.
Thank you. So now we have a question regarding the tourism sector from Sir Diki Mardian. The question is Kopernik working to develop the tourism sector, for example, a tourist village in southwest Sumba or in Gunung Loser National Park in Langkar district? Nanda, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Yes, thanks, Pak Diki. In the past, we also did a project with Mampu as an example in the tourism sector, where we identify the best several tourism package and tested it to then have them tested to several participants and see what are the best packages are desired by these participants. And another example that we are actually currently doing at the moment is another unmet needs research near Gunung Loser. This may not necessarily be addressed to the tourism sector, but if the recommendation of this unmet needs research will then lead to a recommendation in the tourism sector, but at the same time conserving the environment of the Gunung Loser, this is something that that will be included in our unmet needs report next year.
Great, thanks, Nanda. We have a question from Sudarshan. Has Kopernik partnered with any university to get students to upscale lean experiments by having large sample sizes and making experiments more rigorous? Toshi.
Yes, so we have conducted actually a more rigorous one. For example, a few years ago, we have worked with the JPAL, Poverty Action Lab from MIT, and indeed conducted a randomized controlled trial with JPAL and then evidence action. And also in the past, we have worked with a number of universities, and we had the fellowship program, which maybe we should revitalize. We got a lot of excellent students from different universities and helped us collect impact data. And so, yes, I think this is something that is very interesting. And Sudarshan, maybe we should talk offline after this.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Toshi. I'm not seeing any raised hands, so I'll continue to take the questions in the chat box. So we have a question from Pak Iwan regarding the eco-plastic. Is it made of crops? Is it from cassava? Is it from a certain family of cassava which is non-edible? So we tested 11 different types of items, some of which were made from cassava. So yes, some of them were made from cassava, but nonetheless, our experiment found that in the environments that these items were tested in all the environments that they were tested in, they did not degrade. So that's, I guess, a much longer conversation regarding that. Thank you. So we've had 94% of people vote regarding the usefulness of the catalogue. So 51% find it useful, 34% think it'll be very useful, and 9% and 6% respectively think it'll be somewhat useful or slightly useful. So thank you so much for taking the time to respond to our poll. That's very useful information for us. So moving on to another question. So I think Jerome and Michal, you had two very similar questions, which I might get Toshi to take. So what are the main challenges to get the solutions adopted on a larger scale? And then there was another question from Michal, which was, let me just find it, regarding the scaling up. So Toshi, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so as I shared at the earlier session, so I think there's a really great development in terms of there's a more interest in evidence and more interest in really collecting the data. But I think still there's quite a lot of programs maybe formulated not based on the existing evidence, and some of the program may not be too interested in the data. And then, you know, also after the kind of suboptimal result of a particular intervention, we don't want to really talk about those things. I think this kind of culture of I guess the risk-averse nature of the industry as a whole, and then I guess maybe there's a more opportunity to adopt the data-driven culture in this sector. So these are, I think, some of the challenges in this kind of activities. But I think also how do we get some of the more successful ones to be adopted? That is $1 million questions, and we'd love to know ourselves. But I think from our side, we really want to share all the results of our experiments openly, successful or non-successful, and then, you know, really having a conversation like this. And then hopefully, I think this will kind of encourage a lot of other like-minded and peer organizations to kind of show interest and say, oh, if this seems to be promising, why don't we also try this solution in our program? I really wish this type of action kind of takes place, and then so that we can all collectively solve the unmet needs better.
Thanks, Toshi. I see that we missed a question earlier from Ibu Jackie regarding the fish distribution. How do the sellers get frozen gel packs in the morning? That could be difficult. Icha, do you want to take that one? Onanda?
Yes. Hello? Yes. Yeah. So yes, thanks, Ibu Jackie, for the question. Yeah, this needs to be set up upfront, of course. So in introduction to this cooling solution is required. And of course, it needs some infrastructure support. So this infrastructure support includes a freezer where they can freeze the gel packs overnight. And that So when they freeze it overnight, the next morning they have the gel packs ready to be used to freeze to keep the temperature low, and then they can sell the fish for the day.
Great. I hope that answers your question, Jackie. So we have a question from Mark Harrington. Toshi, I know that you touched on this. I'll read out the question. What are the next steps for the solutions with high experimental success ratings? Are these solutions ready for piloting, ready for market? Are there communication channels for connecting with the solution developers directly? Was there anything that you wanted to add that you covered?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you so much. And so in terms of the scaling, I think we are seeing a few possibilities. One is, as you kind of mentioned, one possibility is definitely a commercial scaling, right? So this, okay, let's do this as a business, and then more people get involved in spreading these solutions. But other type of scaling is more public sector driven. And we know that some of the solutions need to be subsidized. And we have seen like a lot of public education subsidized, vaccination subsidized. So there are certain type of interventions that are more appropriate for the public sector supported scaling. So we kind of see both paths. And in terms of the result of the experiments and the types of possible scaling paths of our experiment, I think we can probably, it depends on the solutions that we test. And then probably, again, it can take one or the two ways or somewhere in between with a hybrid. So that's kind of a more sort of we see that it's beyond commercial scaling. And second thing is that as our experiment is very lean, and we doing kind of explicitly a lean experiment. So before making a huge conclusion out of this, we do want this some of the more promising solutions to be tested in a more rigorous way, hopefully with a randomized controlled trial. So that's definitely one of the next steps. And then related to this is kind of to actually introduce these solutions in a larger, slightly larger scale in a pilot, through which we will also learn quite a lot on what can be improved and what are the bottlenecks in implementing at the slightly larger scale. So these are the kind of the next steps that we are foreseeing. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Toshi. So we have, we'll take 3 more questions and then we'll wrap up, which we already have these questions. So the first one is a really great one, and I think this is exactly the kind of question that we wanted. We really wanted to have this question, which was congratulations on the launch of this exciting catalog. Is there a plan to gather insights or document on how others try to implement or do similar experiments in other places? If so, would love to learn from these as well. Toshi, I'm gonna.
Yes, this is a really great question. So let's work together. So as you see that at this point, we have about 25 experiments listed. And there are many other ongoing experiments within Kopernik. So soon we'll have 30, 35. But again, this is not very quick, and this is not the most cost-effective way. So we do want to work with other organizations with kind of similar mindset, interested in experiment, to actually add more examples together. And then, you know, this result and the learning is really, we consider as a public good. So yes, I think we do love to partner with like-minded organizations, and yeah, looking forward to discussing further.
Thanks, Toshi. So we'll just take 2 more questions, and the first one is about coffee, and the second one is about the gel packs. So regarding the coffee fermentation process, how can you process the coffee beans so you can produce coffee beans with good precursor compound for flavor? And that's from Ligade Pasek Manko. Nanda?
Sure. Yes. Thanks for Gide. This is actually a very interesting one. We just we just completed a coffee drying project here in Tabanan, where we also did the natural drying, and the other one is the honey process plus solar using the solar dryer. So this honey processed one is I guess what we call a fermented type of coffee bean, where the coffee cherries are hulled when they're wet, and then we dry them in our solar dryer. So this honey processed coffee beans are one of the ways where a fermentation way where we can get a good flavor of the coffee beans. And we tested the dried coffee to several high-end buyer coffee here around Bali, and the result was that the honey processed fermented coffee beans were the best out of the other type of drying process. So I guess to answer your question, Pagede, the honey processed is based on our solution is the best way to get a good flavor of your coffee beans.
Thank you, Nanda. And our final question for today comes from Ibu Jackie. So thanks for the gel pack answer. Maybe there is an opportunity for Wonder Women to rent them to the sellers who are already paying for ice. So Icha?
Yes, thank you so much. This solution is one of the solutions that have a very strong effectiveness. So it's really showing a great promise to test or to scale for a larger scale. And there's an opportunity to test another set of solutions, for example, as what Bu Jackie mentioned, or to test a cooperative initiative for the gel pack. So more on like the borrowing system that could replace the normal ice. So it definitely has a lot of opportunity to be explored from these solutions. Thank you.
Thanks, Icha. So we're out of time. We've gone over a little bit, and I'm really grateful that so many of you stuck around. Once again, from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for your very active participation, for joining us today, for choosing to allocate your precious time and spend it with us. Stay healthy, stay well, and we really look forward to reconnecting with you in the very near future. You can access the solutions catalog through the link on screen right now. So that's all from us. Once again, thank you, and see you